Hello, my name is George Grant. I'm a GGS Pro Technical Specialist with Griffin. Today we're going to be going over various PGRs or plant growth regulator options for controlling and maintaining height of poinsettias. If you should have any additional questions regarding the material presented in this presentation, please feel free to reach out to us using the contact information listed on the slide. We'll be going over various pesticides in the category of plant growth regulators. Now please note there are various other plant growth regulators not mentioned in this presentation that are just as effective. Regardless, it is the grower's responsibility to read and follow all label instructions. Also note that labels do change, sometimes unannounced, so when you do receive a new bottle of a pesticide, please read the label thoroughly. This presentation will primarily be based on chemical applications or PGR applications for either accelerating or reducing the rate of poinsettia growth. However, from a cultural standpoint, a very important thing to keep in mind as a grower is that if you are battling either staying within height requirements or meeting height requirements with a certain variety, you may want to consider changing the time that you're planting and pinching. It's important to note with poinsettias, they're an obligate short day plant, meaning that when the days get short enough, that's when they start initiating flower from vegetative to reproductive growth. This typically occurs naturally, depending on where in the United States, between September 20th to 23rd. Note, if you have a very vigorous variety, you can shorten your vegetative period by planting and pinching later. If you have a low vigor variety, you can actually plant and pinch earlier to make sure you maximize the number of weeks of vegetative growth. Probably the most commonly applied foliar spray for growth retardation of poinsettias is Cycocel or Citadel. It's chlormequat chloride based. We'll typically apply this for two reasons. One, to reduce internode elongation in the vegetative phase of the plant, as well as trying to even out the plant early on after pinch. After pinch, when the breaks are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches long, we'll do a foliar application. The majority of this will be applied with the top breaks, allowing the bottom breaks to even out and catch up with the top breaks. Now, with any type of foliar application, the volume we apply is very important. For Cycocel, it's incredibly important. To reduce phytotoxicity concerns of Cycocel, we want to make sure that we're applying to a glisten, not to a drip. The typical rates of Cycocel range from 500 to 1500 parts per million, depending on the vigor of the variety and where you are in the United States. It is metabolized in the plant very, very quickly, so you'll get an idea of the growth retardation effect that you'll have within about 5 to 7 days after applying and may need to reapply at that time. We do recommend finishing applications by October 15th in the north and October 25th in the south, because at that point the plant probably won't have any major effect from getting a Cycocel application, as well as we're getting into a transitional time of BRAC development. We do recommend your last application prior to BRAC development or the first color, reduce the concentration by 1/3. In this situation, the grower did not over-apply as far as concentration is concerned, but they did over-apply as far as volume per square footage of production space. Chlormequat chloride, the active ingredient of Cycocel, is a quaternary ammonium product, meaning that it does have some surfactant properties. That's also why we don't need a surfactant when we apply this chemical. Due to these properties, it can lead to some phytotoxicity concerns, as you can see in this photo here. Some time ago, we found out that mixing diminizide, or B9, with Cycocel greatly reduced the potential for phytotoxicity as compared to applying Cycocel by itself. This also provided a synergism as far as growth retardation is concerned. It's important though, now we're using this tank mix with B9 is involved, we need to stop applications by September 25th in the north or October 1st in the south. These are typically the dates where naturally the days are short enough for flower initiation to occur. Moving on to drenches, we're going to typically use an active ingredient called paclobutrazol, which is the active ingredient for the chemicals listed on this slide. It's important to note that the volume we are applying to the soil is very important, as well as the concentration we're mixing up. It's also important to note that if you're using a poinsettia media that contains 30% pine bark or more, you may need to increase your drench rates accordingly. This table briefly outlines the range of concentrations we'd be applying the bonsai or other paclobutrazol products in regards to poinsettia height control. The concentration we apply and the frequency of application are dictated by various factors such as the vigor of the plant, the environment they're grown in, and the time of the production cycle we're in. Before the onset of flower initiation or short days, we typically only apply this one time if needed. This is if the plants were not spaced accordingly or correctly, or we were not able to adequately control height with foliar applications of cyclosil B9. We will use a higher concentration, anywhere from 1/4 to 1 part per million. From the beginning of short days or flower initiation all the way up to around October 25th, we're going to be using something called micro drenches. These are much lower concentrations, ranging from 0.1 to 0.2 parts per million. Typically, you don't need to be using 0.2 parts per million unless you're in the southeast. Micro drenches originally came out of Jim Barrett's research from the University of Florida. They found that using lower concentrations had an overall less effect on reducing total bract size, as well as gave the grower a little bit more room for error. Using smaller concentrations such as this allows us to not over apply PGR, as well as managing height appropriately if we need to be applying weekly applications. After October 25th all the way to November 15th, typically we'll only be getting one application of bonsai if needed. This will reduce any type of late stretch the plant might go under, as well as increases the tightness or quality of the plant overall. This bulletin was produced by GGS Pro at Griffin, and it shows how to mix up various concentrations of bonsai or any other paclobutrazol product that has a 0.4% active ingredient. It also tells you the amount of volume you need to apply based on container size. If you'd like this bulletin, please feel free to email us. Lastly, I'd like to discuss graphical tracking. This is a very common tool and strategy used by poinsettia growers across the country. There's various different programs out on the market available, however, most of them share a very similar concept. We basically take the starting height of the poinsettia, this is typically at pinch, which includes the container height, and then we determine when that plant is going to be shipped and the maximum and minimum height that's dictated by the clientele that we're selling to. In this situation, we pinched at week 36 and we want to be shipping at week 48. The maximum height is 16 inches. The minimum allowable height is 14 inches. Now you can see in this theoretical graph that the majority of the height for a poinsettia is occurring in the vegetative phase. As the plant starts to transition to bract development, that typically starts to level out and the rate of height increase typically decreases. We can use this strategy and basically take weekly measurements from various plants of each variety to determine which varieties are growing too quickly or growing too slowly. If they're going too quickly and they're above the theoretical model, then we can make an appropriate PGR application to reduce that rate of internode elongation and get that plant back on to where it needs to be, make sure that we meet these final height requirements. Thank you again for watching today. If you should have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your local Griffin sales representative or the GGS Pro team. Also, we greatly appreciate any type of recommendations you have for videos going forward. Thank you. Have a great day.